Good morning, everyone. Today, we're stepping back into 2001 to uncover the truth behind the Boraibari border conflict. Was it a planned attack or a misunderstanding? Let's dive into the history.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We have a really fascinating topic on the agenda today. We're going to be unpacking a highly complex and honestly super sensitive geopolitical reality, the India-Bangladesh border, specifically focusing on the Meghalaya sector. Now, we are going to look completely objectively at the data, the academic research, and the historical records from all sides to truly understand the facts on the ground, without taking any sides. So let's dive right in. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the porous frontier. Second, the 2001 border clash. Third, two sides of the conflict. Fourth, daily border challenges. And finally, strategies for security. We'll be transitioning from the historical conflicts directly into the practical, daily realities on the ground, and finally, look at some future academic solutions. Just to make sure we're grounded in solid facts today, you should know that this entire structured explainer is heavily built upon peer-reviewed academic research. Specifically, we're pulling from a really comprehensive study from the International Journal for Multidisciplinary Research, or IJFMR. Their research rigorously analyzes the border management challenges and strategies in Meghalaya, which gives us a fantastic data-driven lens to view this incredibly complex region. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the porous frontier, geography and realities. So, taking a macro view, the state of Meghalaya shares a 443-kilometer border with Bangladesh. But you have to understand, this isn't a flat, empty field where you can just easily build a wall. Nature completely ignores human attempts to draw lines on a map here. We are talking about incredibly difficult terrain. Thick forests, steep undulating hills, deep valleys, and rapid seasonal rivers. Because of these immense geographical hurdles, combined with things like land acquisition issues and local opposition, only about 364 kilometers of this border actually have concrete and wire fencing. This means large sections are naturally wide open, creating these profound vulnerabilities that impact daily surveillance and security for the Border Security Force. Moving on to Section 2, the 2001 border clash, the micro view. Let's transition from that broad geographical view down to a specific, high-stakes historical case study to really understand the tension here. According to academic timelines, on April 15, 2001, tensions ignited when the Bangladesh Rifles, or BDR, stormed Pardiwa village in Meghalaya, claiming it as their territory. Things escalated incredibly fast. By April 16th, a small BSF platoon of about 30 men was besieged by roughly 600 BDR personnel. In response to that, on April 18th, the BSF launched a counterattack at Boraibari, which is an enclave controlled by Bangladesh. While the operation did not go as planned, leading to heavy casualties before the conflict finally subsided on April 19th. It is a very sobering reminder of exactly how fast a border dispute can turn into a deadly military encounter. Which brings us to Section 3, two sides of the conflict, the Rashomon effect. Now, this is where we need to take a completely impartial look at how this exact same tragic event is fiercely remembered in entirely different ways by both nations. The media and historical narratives around this clash diverge wildly depending on which side of the border you're sitting on. Indian media sources, like a 2001 India Today report, recount that 16 BSF Jawans were ambushed and barbarically killed with their bodies terribly mistreated while they were simply trying to protect local villagers. Conversely, if you look at Bangladeshi sources and documentaries, the narrative is framed as a heroic defense. They claim that hundreds of BSF troops illegally crossed the border, and a courageous handful of BDR forces held them off for hours to bravely defend their nation's sovereignty. Now, we aren't here to decide which media narrative is right, but the stark contrast absolutely reveals how deep the geopolitical friction runs, and why managing this border is like solving a giant, complicated puzzle. So, taking all that in, we have to pause and ask the absolutely critical question of this entire explainer. How do we manage an unmanageable border? How on earth do you secure a region where geography, history, and deeply conflicting national narratives all just collide? To answer that, we look at Section 4, daily border challenges. Away from the direct military conflict, this border is a daily battleground of economics and survival. Academic researchers actually brilliantly illustrate the complex flows of human migration here by breaking it down into three main categories. First, there's black infiltration, which is pure secret entry. That's utilizing those dense forests and rivers we talked about earlier. Then there's gray infiltration, where people use legal crossing points but rely on fake documents. And finally, white infiltration, which is entirely legal entry. Understanding these categories is super vital for authorities to deploy the right resources to the right problems. But it's not just people crossing the border. There's a massive daily flow of illicit goods. Smugglers are constantly targeting the region to move narcotics like yaba tablets, fenzadil cough syrup, and ganja. You also see heavy trafficking of cattle and timber. And what's absolutely crucial to grasp here is that for many vulnerable locals living in these remote borderlands, this smuggling isn't just some organized crime ring. It is often their primary or literally their only source of livelihood. This economic reality creates intense friction. Think about it. On one hand, the BSF is tasked with strict national defense. On the other hand, you have local villagers whose daily lives are completely upended. The physical fences might literally cut a farmer off from their own agricultural land, and rigid security checks disrupt traditional farming, social ties, and local economies. It's an incredibly difficult balancing act for the BSF to maintain security while not alienating the very local population they are there to protect. And listen, the threat of cross-border crime is not just history, it is a very current, pressing issue. Just look at this recently documented event from August 8, 2025. In Rungdangai village, located in Meghalaya, 4 Bangladeshi nationals reportedly crossed the border and attacked a local Indian villager before fleeing. Authorities later recovered abandoned weapons, cash, and, surprisingly, a Bangladeshi police officer's identity card. Incidents exactly like this prove that despite all the fencing, the region remains highly vulnerable to sudden, violent cross-border crime. So, how do we fix it? Finding a solution requires looking way beyond just military force. Let's look at Section 5, Strategies for Security. This brings us to a concept called Integrated Border Management, or IBM. Academics and policymakers agree this is pretty much the gold standard. Step 1 is domestic integration. That means getting all the different agencies within a country, like customs, police, and border guards, to actually talk to each other and coordinate. Step 2 is international integration, which means aligning standards, rules, and working hours with the neighboring country. By doing this, you achieve Step 3. You facilitate smooth, legal transit for trade and travel. And surprisingly, that actually makes it much easier to spot and stop the illegal, dangerous boundary threats. But you also have to address the economic roots of the problem. Remember earlier how we said smuggling is a livelihood for locals? Well, the brilliant solution here is opening border hots. These are regulated, legal border markets. By giving locals a legitimate way to trade and earn an income, you directly replace the economic need to smuggle. Furthermore, empowering local governance like the autonomous district councils ensures that border policies actually respect tribal customs and local realities. That turns the border residents into allies rather than adversaries. It's a real win-win. I want to conclude our explainer today by leaving you with this really powerful thought from the IJFMR research. Quote, "The management of this border is not only a matter of security, but it is also a way of taking care of the economic interests of people who have always been dependent on trade and other kinds of collaborations." End quote. It forces us to ask a vital question. As nations look to secure their frontiers in the 21st century, how do we master the delicate balance between building the barriers we need for our safety while actively fostering the economic bridges we absolutely need for our shared prosperity? It's definitely something to think about as we look at the future of global borders. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for watching. Comment your thoughts on this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.